everyone on Facebook, on YouTube, on Zoom, everywhere. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Today is Sunday, September 12th, and we are with Dr. Francis Hayden. Dr. Francis Hayden is practicing MD psychiatrist. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. He's a psychiatrist for the past 30 years in the New York City area, having moved here from his home, the state of Kentucky, after medical school. So he does evaluations, medical management, treatment planning, and consultation for all ages of patients and all diagnoses, including addictions. He is board certified in his main specialty and 2 subspecialties. He is 58, grew up Catholic on the liberal end of the spectrum in Western Kentucky town of Owensboro, one of 4 children and the eldest boy. His father was a small town lawyer and his father a college graduate and full-time mother and homemaker. His older sister, Linnell, died by suicide in 1983 at the age of 20, while an undergraduate nursing student in Evansville, Indiana. He is currently divorced, has 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren, and a son, Giovanni, who died of meningitis when he was 2 years old. So Dr. Hayden joined the Baha'i faith in 1989 and continues to be inspired by it. He works in community mental health by day, and he runs his own private clinic in the evenings with the same population. On most weekend days, he is on call in a state children's psychiatric hospital, and it is there that he has ample time to think and write. He lives and works in Mount Vernon, New York. Today's topic is religion, a blueprint for culture. Religion is the blueprint of culture. Religion and culture are inseparable. Where there is one, there is the other. Religion is here to stay, forming as it does the underlying conceptual structure for sustained and propagated civilizations. The key is to understand the basic human impulse toward the utility of religion, of its truth as relative and not absolute, and to harness it for the betterment of society. From age to age, religions become outdated and must be renewed. Persuasion, but not coercion, is the best way to share your religion with others. And, by the way, the best way is to teach by listening. If you find that you are annoying someone by talking about religion, talk about something else pleasant to you both. Religions are particularly effective in passing on value systems to children. And with that said, we want to welcome you again, Dr. Hayden. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it on this beautiful Sunday morning. How are you?
I'm feeling well. Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. And hello, everyone. With that, we did a little technical run through. It looks like things are working. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the first slide here. Share and put the slide presentation going here. Okay, that's good. I can see everybody now. That's cool. Let's see. Here we go. So I prepared this talk last Sunday, and I was able to, I learned anytime you write a talk, you learn. So we went through the basic ideas here. So the goal, I think, is a ever advancing civilization, and we have to deal with individual people, and people have different beliefs, but when they can come together and around some common idea, they can do great things. My point is that religion's not going away. There are very persuasive intellectuals who feel that religion is more of a relic of the past, and and that we're not going to have religion in the future. And I would argue against that point. It's a basic component of human nature, and we really need to learn to deal with it the way that it exists. It's going to exist. It needs to be transformed and not eliminated. Not that it's not going to be eliminated. That religion has to be updated, and that it's important. It's natural to want to share. If you care about someone and you care about your point of view, it's natural to want to share it. And the key is to do it in a way that's not noxious to the person you're speaking to. And also, I will provide some documentation for some of these ideas, and including that the religions are particularly effective in passing on value systems to children. I'm also going to tell you that I'm going to stop at 11:40 and instigate a discussion. That's my bio. So one of the most fertile ideas I've encountered in the past few years, I work a lot, so I don't have a lot of time to read and delve into academic subjects, but I do talk to people and I think a lot. And of course, as a psychiatrist, you listen to people present their challenges, and you think while they're talking, you're thinking about putting these pieces together and how to be a better person, how to help them more. And I listened to a talk by Paul Lample, is a member of the Baha'i Universal House of Justice a few years ago. He defined postmodernism as the inability to believe in a meta-narrative. So even when people got disaffected with traditional religion, like in the West, Christianity, they moved on to other types of religions like nationalism, non-religious religions, nationalism, communism, things like that. And then after around, World War II was a watershed. There was so much violence and there was so much disappointment from the hopes that came along after World War I, and all this optimistic things about progress. People kind of like they couldn't believe in anything after that. A lot of people couldn't. The world continued to be in very religious. The United States, one of the most religious nations, but it's in the Western civilization. There were a lot of loss of church membership. I remember learning that in college. It's sort of a post-Christian age in a lot of ways, even though we see a lot of reactionary groups. And you do still see receptivity to new religious messages around different groups. They tend to often be in parts of the world where people are under a great stress, economic stress, and they're open to other solutions. And we know people are generally more interested in the finished product than anybody's grand plans, but plans also have the ability to inspire. So, the idea of religion as a blueprint for culture, you could make the argument you don't need a blueprint. If you have somebody who knows how to build a house, they usually just dive in and start building the house. But if you're going to do it as a team, if you're going to have a large structure, complex structure, you really have to get everybody on the same page, literally, and you need plans. And so society being very complex requires norms, motivators, common visions, and ideas. And religions and their derivative foundational documents, such as laws, serve as these blueprints. And religions really are supposed to be working help people work more harmoniously together. I'll just pause and say that in the chat, I have put several links. One is to a funny video that was from the movie City Slickers, but we didn't play it because we didn't get flagged by the copyright people. But that's a little video in which this cowboy is saying to Billy Crystal, you only need one thing in life. And he holds up his finger, and Billy Crystal goes, "What? Your finger?" And actually, he goes, "No, just one thing." And so Billy Crystal goes, "What's that one thing?" And then the cowboy says, "That's what you got to figure out." So that's basically that impulse that human beings are designed to ask ultimate questions and seek ultimate answers, an idea that I first encountered by a psychologist, Lisa Miller, who was teaching at Columbia Teachers College at the time, and did a lot of research into spirituality and adolescent spiritual development, actually, in psychology. So it's like, just to simplify things, there's traditional believers, a lot of skeptics, and then you have dreamers. They're not as common, but they're also very influential, people that are open to new ways of life and society and solving problems. So I got an article that I put the link there. I mentioned that one of the links that in the chat, there's a link to this talk as a YouTube slide presentation that you can pause and go through. There's also a link to the whole kind of full text of my talk, which I'm taking a lot of liberties with, but it's on Medium. It's published on Medium, and the link also is there. I've also put my email address. So that should provide some background if anybody wants to go back and go over these ideas. Feel free to steal the talk and modify it and deliver it somewhere else. I have no interest in owning this talk. So religion and culture, there was this online article by a group of people that looked at religion, culture, and communication. It was in a communication journal. And they went, I think they found an old textbook by a man named Gertz, and he defined religion as a system which acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations. I thought it's interesting that he said mood, and it's true. A lot of people, religion is, a lot of people in religion because they want to feel better. They're under stress and they want to be in a better mood, and they want to feel motivation. So that religion, the ideas of religion can help do that. They help people formulate conceptions of a general order of existence, and they clothe these conceptions with such an aura of factuality that the moods and motivations seem uniquely realistic. I thought that was a very creative definition of religion. And then cultures related to religion. I guess you could have culture without religion, but eventually the religion would probably give rise to, the culture would give rise to a religion, or, and then it sort of propels culture forward, I think. So it's kind of the total way of life, social legacy, ways of thinking, feeling, believing, and it's an abstraction from behavior. So ideas that come from what people do. A theory on the part of the anthropologist about the way in which people, group of people in fact behave. Pooled learning, standard orientations to recurring problems. So you don't reinvent the wheel every time. And some other ideas there that I'll let you take a look at. So just an analogy, you can use an analogy from computer science and coding. So the basic ethical and moral laws, sort of number 6 on Kohlberg's sort of moral levels of moral development. Universal laws would be like the binary code, the zeros and ones. And then your operating system would be religion. And then you would have myriad apps developed from that operating system, which would provide the cultural environment for practical and aesthetic use. So you can sort of look at the world and see, well, like Zoroastrianism was important in development of the Persian Empire, Christianity, which supplanted Roman mythology in the Roman Empire and led to European civilization, so-called Western civilization, and then Islam and Middle Eastern civilization, Hinduism in India, Shintoism in Japan, etc. So the question of chicken and egg is there. Was religion a prelude or blueprint to, coincident to, or a byproduct of civilization? And I would say the blueprint analogy holds up regardless if the blueprint precedes the building of the structure or not. For example, one can build a house from a basic schema without the benefit of detailed architectural drawings. Also, if culture is the house, religion is the set of norms, values, principles, and concepts that are embodied in the house. And the knowledge of the principles underlying its construction and maintenance would be important to preserve the integrity of the structure over time. So maybe you didn't you didn't have a blueprint when you built the house, but once you build the house, it's important to remember where you put everything, right? Once you mill the walls, where was that wire? Where was the pipes? Blueprint would be nice, but could also be retro drafted after the construction if the drafter was familiar with the history of the building. So here's another way of looking at things. So the question about what's going to happen to religion. There was an interesting series by the British Broadcasting Corporation, Deep Civilization series. It was called Tomorrow's Gods, What's the Future of Religion? And this author, Paul Chaudhry, tackled several questions. If religions have changed so dramatically in the past, how might they change in the future? Is there any substance to the claim that belief in gods and deities will die out altogether? I think I misspelled deities, excuse me. Die out altogether. As our civilization and its technologies become increasingly complex, could entirely new forms of worship emerge? And then he reviews evidence for decline of belief in Europe over the past few centuries and says rather provocatively, given all that, there's a growing consensus that the future of religion is that it has no future. And that doesn't seem to be the case now. In fact, he gives evidence against his own thesis. Peter Berger remarked in the New York Times in 1968 that he thought by the 21st century, religious believers are likely to be found only in small sects huddled together to resist a worldwide secular culture, and that hasn't happened. There was also a study done by University of Kent, and they did a detailed study of atheists and agnostics, and like, what are the different factors? And there were a lot of diversity. You had quite a few people who would say they're non-believers, but they identified with a religion. And then you had people that believed in God but didn't identify with a religion. So it wasn't so clear what it meant to be atheist or agnostic, because people would identify religion maybe as a cultural thing. And then there's the old dating website cliche, spiritual, not religious. But like many cliches, it's rooted in truth. That's a quote. That's from Tomorrow's Gods, The Future of Religion. Very interesting read. So what does the Baha'i faith have to say on religion? So I've got a series of quotes. I don't think I have time to read all the quotes, but they're in the slide presentation, and they're in the Medium article. This is not the only good quote. Baha'u'llah has a lot of quotes on religion, but this one I couldn't find this quote other than that it sounds like a special translation for the Promise of World Peace from 1985. The religion is the greatest of all means for the establishment of order in the world and for the peaceful contentment of all that dwell therein. So that's a fairly declarative statement. And he also, I think, somewhere else says when the light of religion is obscured, the lights of peace are also obscured. And then he talks about the best way to share religion is if you think you know something, that a jewel, if you possess a jewel, share it with someone in very, very kind, loving language, and let it do its thing. If they accept it, it's fine. If not, you can just let the person be, right? Don't stay after him. A kindly tongue is the lodestone or magnet of the hearts of men. There's a longer quote that I'm not going to read all of, but this is from Abdul Baha. Let's see if I can move this up. And it talks about how listening to people bonds you to them. Listening very carefully bonds you to them, and you may or may not agree with what they're saying, but you can respect their point of view, and they start to feel that you care about them and you understand them. Do religions grow old and wear out? What then? So Baha'u'llah said that religion is like a garment for the human temple, and the body of man needs a garment, and whenever the robe has fulfilled its purpose, that the Almighty will surely renew it. And every age requires a measure of the light of God, and every divine revelation sent down in a manner that befitted the circumstances of the age in which it appeared. So religious truth is not absolute, but relative. And that's directly from Shoghi Effendi and the World Order of Baha'u'llah. I'm sure there's other references, because I'm sure that Shoghi Effendi did not make this up on his own. I didn't do a search. There may be other people that know where those come from in the writings of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. But it seems intuitively true, because you have to look at words that have different meanings, and seemingly contradictory things can be true. And that's part of wisdom. What is the role of religion in social cohesion? So that's a beautiful quote, that Baha'u'llah is calling on people to accept the common foundation of all the world's religion. The differences between the ordinances under which they abide should be attributed to varying requirements and exigencies of the age, and all of them, except a few, which are the outcome of human perversity, were ordained of God and are a reflection of his will and purpose. So when I talk to people about Baha'i, I don't say we believe in every religion. I say we believe in the main world religions, including some that we don't know about from the past. And it's not for us to say which ones are true or not, but just the idea that they can't be just one correct religion and everybody else is wrong. On religion as a template or strategy for world civilization, I like this quote. The fundamental purpose animating the faith of God and his religion is to safeguard the interest and promote the unity of the human race. And the part about the blueprint, foundation, or strategy is the line that says, whatsoever is raised on this foundation, the changes and chances of the world can never impair its strength, nor will the revolution of countless centuries undermine its structure. And our hope is the world's religious leaders and rulers thereof will unitedly arise for the reformation of its age. And we encourage that, and we encourage the world to do this. We don't see it enough. We're very frustrated sometimes that it's not happening. And sometimes crises bring this about. But our job, I think, as forward-thinking people is to try to help us visualize this so that we can avoid some of the calamities. On the avoidance of contentious disputation in religious matters, Abdul Baha goes very far as to say that it would be better to do without it if your religion is now the cause of darkness through human misunderstanding and ignorance, you set it aside. So that's a very operational definition. Religion is that which unites, true religion. Some other thoughts I had about this subject. So faith-based approaches to light, I don't see them exiting the stage anytime soon. My assertion is that they will never be erased. Religion is a force constantly to be reckoned with, for better or ill. Religion is a powerful motivator for both good and bad. In civil multicultural contexts, our leaders must come together to agree on norms that will prevent religiously based expression as we curb its abuses. What those exact solutions are, we have not figured out in many cases. But Baha'u'llah said about religious education, schools must first train the children in principles of religion so that the promise and threat recorded in the books of God may prevent them from the things forbidden and adorn them with the mantle of the commandments. But this, there's a key phrase here, this in such measure that it may not injure the children by resulting in ignorant fanaticism and bigotry. And that's really the biggest objection, I think, to, and I would say hypocrisy and other kind of evils. The biggest objection to non-religious people is all the evil that organized religions have done. It's just a horrible, it's a horrible record. So here you have a prophet of an independent world religion, Baha'u'llah, saying essentially, take it easy on that religion stuff. It can get out of hand. So you can't be a religious fanatic. You have to listen and you have to use wisdom. Religious education of children. I like Lisa Miller's approach to this. I think the idea is that, what happens in development, little children tend to, pre-pubertal children have a tendency to over-idealize their parents, and they think so they don't think their parents are perfect, but they're like the standard. And so if they learn about religions from their parent, that's fine, but then we get to be teenagers and they learn all the parents' foibles. Sometimes the baby goes out with the bathwater, and the kids would lose their belief in religion because they learned the parents weren't perfect. So by having, the beliefs of the parents, which may include certain wonderful ethical teachings, may become under suspicion. But if you posit that there's a supreme being, then that the belief in God can help the teenager maintain their faith in standards and moral standards, even if they determine that their parents are not perfect. One of the French philosophers, was it Nietzsche, said, if God did not exist, it would be necessary for him to be invented. So there's a great utility, again, because humans are designed to ask ultimate questions and seek ultimate answers. And she's written academically and done research about this. And so there's a lot of information. So let's see where we're at here. So I'm just repeating myself here. So I think the main point is that religion's not going away. It has to be moderate religion, and it has to be religion that, civil society, you have to have different religious people come together and set aside their religious difference enough to establish some civil law. And we do this. We have a lot of common agreement on civil laws, murder, stealing is wrong, things like that. But then, whether you eat pork, you don't eat pork, you wear a hat, you don't wear a hat, all that stuff, people need to lighten up about that, because people need to have an individual expression. And when people lose that ability to distinguish between civil law and God's law, then you have sort of a lot of religious strife and fanaticism and conspiracy theories and misinformation and just a lot of crazy stuff out there. So I am gonna now stop screen sharing. So hopefully I've stimulated some thought there. I finished a little bit early because I know I provided the materials, and anybody that wants to read deeper, I actually wrote this out like a paper, so I didn't read the paper. I thought about reading the paper, and I decided not to read the paper. I would just sort of ad lib off the slides. And it seems like it works out better. So come at me. See if anybody here I know. Let's see. I might know Janet Harris, but I'm not sure. If you were in Louisville before, I might know you, but that's somebody else maybe. Is anybody alive out there? Anybody want to venture to turn on their?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Matthew here.
Hi, Matthew. Nice to meet you.
You too. I'm John.
I hope I wasn't talking too fast.
Well, it took me a second to operate the phone to unmute it.
Oh, okay.
I tried zooming in. I tried joining with my laptop, and I went like 7 times, and I went through everything I could do to get in.
Oh, well,
during my email. So the only thing that works is the iPhone.
Well, if you care to go back over all the materials and links in the chat. So, but basically the idea that religion's not going away. Some of us are, teaching the Baha'i faith. Other people are here just to learn and, sort of investigate. So I'm interested to know anybody's perspectives and how receptive do you find people to the idea that, religion's going to be around? We just have to deal with what the form that it takes, not whether religion is going away.
I see basically when you talk to people, either they're willing to talk or absolutely not. It's like one way or 100% the other way. There's no in the road anymore.
Right. But usually people are willing to talk about something. I mean,
they'll talk. They'll listen
to my paper.
They don't understand it and they'll say, what? I never heard of that. And then they'll go, what is that? And then the first question is that a cult? I go, no.
That's right. That's right. So, you build trust. You could just talk to people. How you doing today? I mean, you could talk about the weather. I mean, just form a dialogue. Once you have a dialogue going, it's easy as a psychiatrist in a way to start conversations. They come to you and they have a problem. So they start talking about their problems. But then, just meeting people on the street or in the deli or, in the doctor's office or
I usually do
socially.
business. Wife's a realtor. She brings it up and I ask her. They say she's very good. She says, why? Because I'm a Baha'i. And that's how I operate my business. So standards and principles of being a Baha'i. Oh, really? What's that? And they ask. And then she tells me.
Yeah. There's all these different approaches. I mean, direct, indirect.
Direct, if they're not asking, I was told that basically if somebody is wanting to be knowledgeable, if they want to be, in other words, if they want to ask, then you tell them. It's kind of difficult when you say to someone, hey, I got this new religion and you should look at it, and I'm going to force it down your throat. And they're going to go, oh man, this guy, he's a nut job. It's like, then they think of the guy that put 100 people out in some pasture and they all took poison to meet God and died, with a guy. And I told my son about these other things, and these younger kids, they have no idea about these religious people that were fanatics that killed Jones' account and stuff. And I said, what about the FBI people out there that shot up a whole place? Do you know anything about that? Well, that was all over. What was that about? They look at the bad aspects of the religion, and then they throw that. That's why I'm not religious. And Gilbert Akin made a statement one time. He said they questioned in Australia religious and what they were all about religion. 51% of them said, well, they believe in it being a Jedi.
Yeah, the Jedi religion is very popular. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go, is that a religion now, being a Jedi? I go, that's so.
Well, there's this concept of common human needs, and that's your basic go-to in teaching, I think. And then I think, I'm going to assume that, if you're in this sort of Baha'i conversation on a regular basis, we're going to have this, and if you're not, you're going to get to see people who identify as Baha'i talk about this a lot. We don't want to paint everybody with the same color. We're trying to make the world better, and we're trying to. There's basically, Abdu'l-Baha said, to be a Baha'i simply means to love all the world, to love all humanity and try to serve it and work for universal peace and brotherhood. That's to be a Baha'i. And I think elevated conversations that lead to unity, harmony, and trust and common purpose. These are things that people usually can relate to, regardless of whether they, whether you're fly the flag for a particular label,
right,
sports team or religion or nation or ideology. People are generally appreciative of. It's like if you've ever been to cross-cultural training, and I've been to cross-cultural training, and I did like an online course, like 5 hours. And there's certain things that they're different between cultures, but it's almost never a bad thing to greet someone with a smile,
Oh,
Usually look them in the eye and listen. Be patient, kind. Those are all the things across all cultures. And they're very forgiving if you do those things.
I mean, I'm an insurance agent. Believe me,
Yeah.
I know if you don't shut up and listen and have them tell you
There
no.
you go. That's it. That's it. So I think there's value in saying Baha'i and saying Baha'u'llah, because a lot of people haven't heard it. And you could give some basic facts and say, well, I don't care if you join. That's what people don't know about it. It's pretty cool. I like my religion. I think it's cool. It guides me. I don't care whether or not any of you joins it or not, whether you believe in God or not. I think the people need to understand what's going on in the world and the diversity of belief. And then otherwise, how's your mother? How's your father? How's your kids doing? How are you doing? How are you feeling today? Those things.
Yeah, I mean, when they bring it up. It's kind of, I meet a lot of people now who aren't religious at all anymore.
Yeah.
At least where I live, it's the used to be a really Catholic influence around here, a lot of it. And what happened maybe 5 miles where I live, that one of these priests was a child molester, and he was the one that made the paper, went to another country and came back. I mean, that has happened around here a lot.
Yeah, well, look at my story. I knew about the Baha'i faith and liked it 4 years before I actually joined. The first thing that happened was I ran a couple of Baha'i ideas off of my very beloved priest at the Newman Center in Kentucky, and he missed, he was wiping the air. He missed the point. And I was so disappointed. I started to, so the first thing happened is I lost my belief in the Catholic Church, which was unusual because I had been an enthusiastic Catholic my whole life. I learned that it wasn't what I thought it was in terms of unity and beliefs in, disbelief in other religions. He called all of Islam was, violent, converting people at the sword, and left out the part about the Christians that did the same thing. And but you would think, I would just jump into Baha'i. A lot of people just get alienated for a long period of time before they land somewhere, if they ever do. And I love atheists and agnostics, because the atheists, especially because they're trying to be especially good people to prove you don't need God to be good people. Very hyper ethical people, I've found. I love atheists.
Okay, that's new to me. Okay. I meet him and I go, okay, I kind of like
take an atheist to lunch. Yeah. I love atheists.
I know a lot of agnostic people. Agnostic people are pretty
yeah.
Too. They're actually behave better than most of the Catholics.
I like it because that gives me a chance to show the religious people aren't all bad,
Yeah, well, hey, that's a good idea. That's true.
Francis, Matthew, I'm going to jump in here with a question from online.
Okay,
and
sure.
The question to you, Francis, is how would you respond to an individual turned off by the word religion, given what's going on in Texas and the general attack on women endorsed by fundamentalist groups?
Exactly. That's a great question. So my general approach to this is that the best antidote to suspicion, distrust, superstition, and division is actually getting to know a human being. So, and if you've looked, there's a human being on every side of you. They're at work, they're in your neighborhood, and people respond to kindness, right? So you cannot have a civilization where everybody stays in their own camp and only talks to people that agree with them, right? And the political process that leads to some of these sort of draconian laws, the political process itself is flawed. So what I would say about religion is in these days, we don't I mean, it's like trying to rehabilitate something. Okay, it's like trying to rehabilitate a word. We've taken this word religion, but if that's a noxious word to someone, I'm not going to keep saying religion, because it's going to be, they've already told me they're allergic to that word, so I'm going to use a different word. I'm going to use problem solving. I'm going to use what's the world need now, right? What the world needs now, love. So what is love? What the world needs now is more understanding. I asked somebody the other day, who was it? Gosh, it was pretty, I thought it was a pretty conservative guy. Yeah, actually I asked one of my patients the other day, I said, what do you think the world needs now? And this is a retired New York City guy. He said, you know what? The biggest problem we have is division. There's too much division. I said, absolutely. You and I are on the same page. I agree with you. And then we went on to talk about another subject. What we do as Baha'is is we look for areas of agreement, and also we look to have our minds changed. We look to have our perspectives broadened. I'll give you an example of that right now, because I have a patient who preferred the face mask to a vaccination. And I've been so angry at people that don't get vaccinated, like, why don't, come on, let's get real. This is a person, there's a whole group of people, for example, who've always been germ conscious and always been germ phobic and always over clean their house and always avoid crowds and always, cover their mouth when they cough. And they've done pretty good avoiding germs. And they very well, and there's a whole culture of avoiding germs, avoiding contagion, is a big part of what they went through in their lives. The vaccination is not something they know very well. It has a short history. And how many times has something been rolled out only 5 years later to find out that it was a problem? So they've been through this. So I'm more sympathetic to this person now. I still think people should get vaccinated, but now I don't think they're all crazy. I did see a guy wearing a mask alone driving his car. I didn't know what that was about. So if the word religion is the problem, find a different word, one that you can both work with. In the political process, we need to be building a new culture of respect, of tolerance, of appreciation, of common values. All right, and having that solid Baha'i foundation is the best foundation you could have for building a multicultural society that will evolve into more cohesiveness over time. We'll have more Baha'is over time because they'll think this is what we're doing is cool. But it's just, we can't just be out there selling our ideas like that, hard selling our ideas. We have to listen. Don't omit sharing, though, about the faith. Just remember to pause.
But from your perspective, it's entirely an issue of one-on-one, heart-to-heart communication.
Yeah.
Building that basic function and that basic relationship within the community structure.
Yeah, talk to somebody you don't think you were going to agree with, and find out how many things you agree with them on. It's the writings will help you how to approach people. I mean, there's this, I put a video up with some music behind it. There's Anne Marie Honold has a book called Reflections on the Life of Abdul-Baha, the story about him counseling a lady who's going back to the States. A lot of people, he said, a lot of people can't hear the word Baha'i. It's going to think it's strange, they'll be unreceptive, but you can always talk to people. This is like 1912 or whatever. You can always talk to people about the love of God. Now, maybe today in some cases you can't, but you could talk about the love of God with people and they'll be receptive. And so then when you're receptive and attractive and people are attracted to you and you enjoy them and you enjoy you, you can talk about your religion, then you talk about their religion. I mean, these are all just ways. Religion is a particular way of looking at the world that has certain advantages, but it has disadvantages when it becomes too aggressive. And again, my basic assertion is religion and culture are inextricably intertwined, and that if you agree we have to have culture, then the question is not whether to have religion, is what's the best way to do religion. And I think Baha'is do religion very well. But there's other groups that do religion very well too, and we should make sure that we have close ties and friendships with them. And that on the leadership level, we have a lot of project a lot of common values. The biggest thing that turns people off, that are non-religious, is the division, is the infighting between people who say they believe. It's like, oh, look, there's one God, why you guys fight with each other? That's not a good example. It's very hypocritical. So the religions have to agree, and the religions have to promote harmony as a group. So Baha'is do a lot of interreligious activity, therefore.
So we have a question, and this question is from Clearwater. The question is, how can we combat this hypocrisy that has overcome so many religious systems that are in place right now, where people feel that they cannot trust these systems that are in place, be it secular or religious, where their trust has been shattered? How do we rebuild this trust for a society to function with trust?
So it's like this: you at the proper time, if it's appropriate for a given person, you identify yourself as a religious person. Then you listen. Then you inquire as to the other person's needs. Then you meet such needs as of those that you can, include usually just letting them bend your ear. And then you keep your promises to people, and then you make sure that you don't do bad stuff in your own life that sort of exposes you as someone who's harming others. So let's stop harming others. And if we're not sure, let's take a look at our lives and look at ways in which we may be harming others. And so our lives are very much public these days. So we have to look at ourselves and look at what we're up to and make sure that our lives have integrity. So when our lives have integrity to a degree, our lives have integrity, and we greet others warmly, and we share, and we keep our promises, and the person knows you're religious, they'll be like, I don't like religious people, but you're okay. I have a friend who's Black who says, I hate white people, except for you. And that, that's not, she's trying to make me feel good, but I'm sure there's other white people she likes. But when you know a specific person, it breaks down stereotypes. It really does. And it's always possible all the time with everyone to be kind. And you can always be kind under all circumstances. And if you might meet somebody very, very noxious, just move on, talk to someone else. And probably nobody else wants to talk to them either. Unless you feel like you have an in with that person. Some people are good at engaging people that are in pain and are expressing it through aggression.
Thank you for that. And what personal life experience do you feel helped prepare you to acknowledge Baha'u'llah and to embrace this faith and see these solutions that you're talking about now? What personal life experience do you feel best prepared you to do this?
I would say growing up in a particular, I didn't realize this, I grew up in a particular kind of enclave of the Catholic Church. It wasn't really necessarily the typical Catholic experience for most people. I was in Western Kentucky, and I found out that in the Catholic Church, there's the diocesan power structure, and then there's the religious orders. And the religious orders tend to be more missionary. So they would get out of the big eastern cities, go out onto the prairie, like Kentucky was kind of the part of the prairie, and they would fund these charitable institutions, hospitals, schools, and they would just, they would provide education for the population and create a lot of good PR for the Catholic Church. Now, they were doing it for Jesus. They were doing it to take vows of poverty and obedience. And in that culture, there's a little more tolerance from Rome for more progressive ideas because they're bringing in new believers. So, for example, We had altar girls growing up. We had, you know, at post-Vatican II, they would do more liberal things, guitars in church. I played a guitar mass. I was an altar boy. I went to retreats. I did all that stuff, communal worship. And also I found out that there was a very strong element of feminism and also liberation theology within the Catholic Church at that particular point. Now, these were more liberal sides of the Catholic Church, and there's a conservative side as well. So my mom was tended to be a little more on the liberal side. And when I went to her and I said, I want to look at, I want to join the Baha'i faith, or I believe in Baha'i ideas of oneness of religion. She said, you know what, son, the most important thing for you to do is follow your conscience, which is basically, that's Baha'u'llah's independent investigation of truth, right? So my mother basically gave me the Baha'i faith, because I think if my parents had been unsupported, I might still have done it, but it would have been a lot harder probably, because I cared about them and what they thought. So that experience of my mom saying, follow your conscience. So I have to credit her for that. And she's been really my biggest moral and ethical inspiration in my life.
So how do you see society transformed on this basis of following your conscience, not following what your fathers and your forefathers have done? How do you see, from your perspective, also colored by your profession, I see as well, in a very illustrative context, how you see people coming about to believe in something that their family doesn't believe in?
Yeah. So I'm doing it now. I mean, the way I'm running my private practice, everybody thinks I'm crazy that I'm doing it this way. I basically give all the money to the staff. I don't take any money in my private practice. And the patients love it. I take insurance. The staff love that they can have a living wage and that they run the business and they develop all the business aspect. All I got to do is show up and see the patients. Luckily, I don't need the money because I have 2 other jobs, but I basically, this is my Baha'i service project. So like a lot of, big time, active Baha'is, they're in some meeting or in a fireside, or they're in a assembly meeting, every night of the week, they're doing some study circle. Every night they're doing something. I don't have that time. So I have dedicated my time in my practice, usually Tuesday through Friday evenings till about 9 o'clock after work. I do it, and then a couple of weekend days a month. And so when I realized that could be my Baha'i service, it freed me up a lot. But people think I'm being exploited by the staff, and I just don't see it that way, because it's voluntary. It was hard for a long time. I actually did feel exploited by my staff. I felt they were taking advantage of me because I have a soft heart. Now I'm doing it voluntarily. It's just amazing. So I know I'm doing the right thing, even if nobody else does.
That's amazing. I mean, I haven't really heard of an example like that until just now. There's some comments that I'd like to point out. Alex says, a wonderful tribute to your mother. Shamim says, actions are more important than words. You are doing God's work, rest assured. And he says, work done in the spirit of service is worship, with a wink.
That's it. Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. Like, how do you manage this practice of yours? Because it seems to me as culturally disruptive. What is it that you do that?
Well, I've told. Well, I mean, it's 2 women of color. One's Dominican and one's African American. They're both on the young side. They both have kids, and it's like a family. Basically, we've been doing this for 8.5 years now. And we've had our ups and downs, knockdown, drag out arguments and stuff. And this all died down a couple of years ago when I started listening to what they said about my attitudes and some of my ego and arrogance and stuff, and anger. And then when I looked at the Baha'i writings, I realized they were right. Basically, their point of view sort of got to me. But I said, look, guys, I do have to have time to do my laundry and go grocery shopping. So because they've taken on improving the management of the practice, now we can hire other providers physician assistant, or nurse practitioner. And the first step is to get a night off. So like Wednesday, I think they're going to figure out a way to give me Friday night off, because, you know, they appreciate me just kind of showing up and taking care of the patients and being the medical director. And they do not want to run me in the ground, both because it wouldn't be good for them, also because that they're very kind-hearted and fair and loving people, and they have a lot of love and compassion. So it's a transition. But yeah, so the goal is to have a more normal life going forward. I'm 58. I can't do this forever. Somebody else is going to have to take over at some point. And I don't want to leave all the patients in the lurch when I retire. And I'm going to plan to retire in about 15 years. I'll be about 73, I think, when I retire. One
I mean, this is all amazing. And thank you for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. This is one of my, the fame of the Clearwater Baha'is is spread far and wide, guys. You know, I was expected like 300 people here. You guys are so consistent, and I hope you keep it going.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And what's the important part is, of course, our viewers on YouTube and on Facebook are watching this at different times. So
okay,
maybe
you have a wider audience as well, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's not, for example, in Zoom, where you may see about 20 or 30 people usually, but you'll have a lot of people on Facebook and on YouTube who join over time, and they take their time to maybe rewatch these videos several times. And
I do appreciate the audience being patient, and, you know, I know I drone on, so I appreciate you listening. I see people kind of hanging in there. So you guys have a great group there.
I'm fascinated by your ethos towards the people who work for you. And I have to ask you, what do you think the pandemic taught business people about how they should compensate their employees? Your example seems to be one that the Baha'i faith encourages about being good to the worker.
Well, talk about hypocrisy. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that, you know, wages are too high and also complain that you can't find anybody to go to work. It's just completely, totally contradictory statements. And also not providing childcare for people. You got to stay home. You know, the kids are not in school. You got, I mean, people. You see how nuts people are in not recognizing the basic human needs. People need a living wage, and they need childcare. If the women are in the workforce, they need childcare. Period. So I think maybe gradually people are starting to wake up to this reality when nobody shows up to work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Francis, if I can ask you another question in regards to your chicken or the egg scenario, or going back to the reference that you had in regards to being able to design culture, whether or not you realistically need a blueprint. My question is, the blueprint's kind of there though, right? I mean, religion is essentially one, and it's renewed throughout the ages. Mm-hmm. I think people find that to be the biggest discrepancy, because the impression up until now, the thought, the logical line of thought in regards to religion is that they were multivariate. But in reality, if religion is one, then there is no multivariant. It's been multiplied to an extent that is culturally accepted. But
well, I look at it like the unified field theory that people are looking at. So that it's it doesn't mean there's one religion, there's many religions, but there's one source, right? So there's this idea of this unknowable supreme being from which all truth emanates and is in harmony with scientific discoveries, right? So I always tell people, the deeper you go into your own heart, your own inner being, you're more likely to encounter this universal consciousness that other people and also God. You know, I was listening to Krista Tippett on Being, And they discovered the forest is so integrated under the surface with all the root systems and sharing nutrients between the big trees and the small trees and the fungi. And it's like one organism. It's amazing. And it's evolved over millions of years. And so humanity's like that. We're all sort of all is one. My mom wrote a book once called The Journey to the Center of Ourself. And the point of the book was the only thing that's real is love, and everything else is an unfortunate misunderstanding.
That's a very good point. Everything is love and everything else is, say that again, that quote.
The only thing that's real is love, and everything else is an unfortunate misunderstanding.
That's a quote that has a lot of significance to it, in the sense you can think about it in a spiritual sense. You can think of it in a scientific sense. You can think of it in many ways. There's a movie referring to this, Interstellar, that is Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was the conclusion, the pith of the whole movie is the only way you can really locate anything in the universe is through the force of attraction, through the love that you have for another. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very interesting point. And going back to the concept of culture and culture's development and humanity pretty much unable to function without it, and religion being the prime motivating force in any change of that culture, it all comes back to this concept of love, right?
It's because people's basic, fundamental, deepest values are what they ultimately will go the farthest. They'll go to the end of the road for those things, right? So the atheist will go to the end of the road for their belief that society does better without God. That's a belief. That's a passionate belief, right? So if you know, you have to respect and understand the motive force, the powerful motivating force that religion is, and deal with that, and try to align values and agree to. There needs to be a lot of agreement to disagree, and it seems to be. You've watched the news. News is very distorted. I realize there's nothing to do with what's really going on. Maybe they're going to be dealing with 1% of what's going on. The other 99% doesn't make the news. So let's. I've turned off the news mostly.
That being said, though, there's a lot of freedom now compared to even, I guess, 50, 60 years ago. Freedom to believe, and this repressive, this oppression that used to exist in the past, where people couldn't freely learn, they couldn't freely choose. They couldn't investigate for themselves. Now you have at your fingertips the ability to see anything and everything you want.
Yeah. It goes with the territory. I mean, the people find each other online and they amplify their crazy ideas, and good ideas and crazy ideas. It's the feature of the system.
One thing I wanted to make a comment. I was reading the Wall Street Journal earlier, and they had a video of downtown Kabul where they have all these women coming out in a procession, and thousands of them saying, "We want our rights, we want to keep our jobs." And they were the current now, I guess, the Al-Qaeda, they don't know how to deal with it. They never dealt with these protests. So
you mean the Taliban in Afghanistan, Kabul, right?
Kabul, right? So it was on this morning's Wall Street Journal report, and there's a reporter who's still there, and it kind of looks like you, sir. Anyway, if you look at it, you'll see it. He's pretty much with you without a beard, and he's saying, "Look, these women for the first time ever are now doing protests, and there's thousands of them. These Taliban soldiers are shooting in the air. They don't realize where their bullets are dropping, but they don't know what to do, and they're frustrated. So there's thousands of women walking down the march. Now, I remember that in the 1920s here, right, to vote for women here, but we didn't have thousands of people walking around with machine guns, right? So now they have all these women walking down there. So that's change, and that's one of the Baha'is rules, right?
It's hard to put the genie back in the bottle with women's rights. I thought about that. It's kind of a losing battle. I don't think it's, I don't think it's going to be hard to enforce that type of inequality.
The Baha'i faith might have a lead in, a step into that there, because of all the religions are there. I mean, they all kind of like, they know about Baha'i faith and being on Iran and stuff, but maybe there might be some change. Maybe some good did come out of staying there for 20 years where they saw democracy and freedom and this and they all have iPhones and the internet there. So I guess it's like you just said, the communication, or they can organize.
Yeah.
Now there's videos coming out of people of all the protests. Maybe it might be some change for the better. They can actually get out of their 1,000-year slump of killing each other, right? That's just my comment there on that.
Yeah. So we all hope for more justice in the world, all times, in every location.
Indeed. With that being said, it's a very important current event. And for those of you watching, especially on YouTube and Facebook, it's 2021 September. Just recently, the United States pulled its entire military and its people out of Afghanistan, and this is right now for world awareness. It is a crisis right now. What's going on in Afghanistan, and that is an interesting example of religion and culture and the dynamism that's occurring, where there's a lot of commotion and it's very volatile. So today, what we're seeing today, it may not be the case a month from now. It may not be the case a year from now. So we are just looking at this from our piece, this little slice of history. But that being said, it is very, very it is very disheartening, some of the things that people are going through, but at the same time, the courage that they are exhibiting to really have self-determination and see where this self-determination takes them. Definitely our prayers are out for all the people of all kinds, from all origins, from all places that are in this conflict that is happening right now. And of course, the people in other countries as well. You have people in Haiti. The commotion is going on in Haiti right now. It's terrible. They had natural disasters. Their government has been toppled because of assassination. You have, of course, just yesterday in America, people were observing September 11 and the horrors that happened just 20 years ago. Imagine this article came out saying that the children born on September 11 are now turning 20. So as of yesterday, anyone who was born on September 11 is now 20 years old.
Yeah, I didn't want to give the impression I don't watch the news. I keep up with the news. I used to watch it obsessively, though. I would watch, just keep it, in the background, listen, and then it just was too repetitive. And so I just try to generally keep an eye on the major events.
Yes, and what's important about all this is that whether we try to secularize or not, religion is at the heart and center of every conflict. And isn't there something in the Baha'i faith about the future of our world where people will find, initially, people will try to stamp out religion as the source of the problem before they finally realize they need it and accept it, and then accept the Baha'i faith?
Well, the three stages of a great idea are: first, people agree that it's preposterous and impossible. The second, that it's a great idea, but other people won't accept it. And the last stage is, that's obvious.
So where do you think we are now?
I think we're in the great idea, but it's impractical stage now.
Stage 2. So you don't think we're in the preposterous stage still?
No, I think most people tell me the Baha'i ideals are wonderful, but impractical. Except we know these things are necessary, and they align with people with the broader public's belief. Most of our beliefs align with the broader public's beliefs already. I think getting deep into a friendship with someone and while continuing to be a good person is still the best way to teach.
So there is this, and I just pointing it out as what your thoughts are on this. There's this, some polls, there's this realization that some people have said when they identify with a religion, they identify as Jedi from Star Wars. What
Yeah,
is
the
your take
Star
on
Wars
that?
and then Star Trek religion's pretty good too. It's portrayed in a almost uniformly positive light in the Star Wars thing. I mean, it's man's search for meaning, you know. I mean, it's nice to be able to summon a force when you're under threat. A good point to make too is that people under a lot of stress, economic and political stress, are more likely to be religious. You know, the whole idea that there's no atheists in the foxholes, you know, in the trenches. And that's true too. So that's, I think, why we find maybe more receptivity among the rural peoples in third world, underdeveloped world.
That point, and you've brought it up at one other point during this talk today, and this is an important point, I think, to think about, because whether people are asking the question, this comes up maybe subconsciously, maybe the person's thinking of it is not brave to ask the question. And well, the people who are typically call themselves atheists, or even, to say the least, they'll say they're not with any organized religion, for example, not with any organized religion. A lot of people will say that the reason that they are not religious is not that it's a sham or any of these other things, but they'll say, particularly speaking, and with passion in this part, that the only people you really see following religion are poor, sick, ruined. Something is terribly wrong in their life, that's the only place they have left to turn. What is your take on this, and why is it that the strong, the people who are considered the well off really in society, why is it that despite the fact that those people exist too, people who are well off, people who have good hearts and they're doing good services, good deeds with those hearts that they have, they're doing good things, and with their resources they have, they're doing good things. Why is it just because there's a lot of people, as the world is full of people, but 6 billion people, statistically speaking, you're going to have a lot of people, if you have religious people, that are also not well-to-do. Why is it that this is principally the argument one may take against religion, that it's the opiate of the masses, as voiced by some communist leaders?
Well, I would say everyone needs comfort, and rich people are also running scared. You know, anyone that does not have some sense of meaning of their life, it's to some degree running scared, and they're looking for distraction, because that void of lack of meaning is very difficult for people, right? So they have to fill it up with something, and so we need wealthy. We need the wealthy to also be feeling solidarity. You know, Abdul Baha used the term human solidarity, right? So, and he was talking to Andrew Carnegie a lot. I think he had a big fortune. And Baha'u'llah extols the virtues of a wealthy person who's also spiritually enlightened. But I would say usually people follow their particular philosophical path for their own reasons. I would say not, rather than saying I don't want to be a part of that because it's just for poor people. But I take your point, and you're talking about the opium of the masses. So what you want is justice. You don't want to just anesthetization of people. So the idea is to awaken people, not to just anesthetize them. That's not the point. So I would disagree with the idea that the religion can be comforting, but if it puts you in a stupor, it's not. If it takes away your powers of reason, that's not a good religion. That's not a good way of using religion.
Well, for centuries,
outside of reality, yeah.
For centuries, people were told to accept their reality. They were told that they have to accept their suffering. Like word for word, they were told that they were to accept it, that it was ordained by God.
Yeah, but that's so easy for most people to see through. It's pretty obvious that somebody's doing a number on you, and that type of scam doesn't really last very long. I'm reading Maya Angelou, and she talked about that dynamic in the church, that you grew up in, is that a lot of the people talked about the justice going to come someday. And by the time, this was in the 30s and 40s, by the time of the 50s and 60s, there were fewer people willing to go that route. They're not waiting for God. They hit the streets after that.
What gets to me though is, and yes, you're right to say that eventually people will see through that. What gets to me though is, and this is something that at least I will say personally bothers me because of the miscommunication, the misunderstanding that I've seen as a result of this, is that a lot of people who are effectively from the point of the religious figures they are looking at, their clergy, if you will, the priest, the pastor, the imam, the whatever you want to call them, these people who have a position of authority in their religious community. These people, for practically millennia and into the modern age, have peddled this idea of being content with not the suffering that is in the path of God, but the suffering that is the injustices heaped upon them. And
right, but thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It didn't say thy kingdom come someday and heaven and earth will be entirely divergent forever. We're talking about lines that come together on earth as it in thy will be in the future done as earth as it is in heaven. So that the life on earth is supposed to become better, more just, more equitable, more fair. And so pie in the sky is against the Bible, I would say. And in the meantime, if you're overwhelmed, it's nice to turn to faith for hope, but we still need justice.
But people teaching faith were the ones who, in the view of people who left the religions, people teaching the faith, people who were supposed to be the stewards, the guardians.
Well, people walked out of church. I mean, people walked out of church. A lot of these churches are very, very, very low membership now. There's not much interest in them. I mean, they still have assets, they have money, they have a status, but I would say that it's the life has gone out of the body. The lamp is off. You have the lamp, but there's no light. It's so funny that even among people, so I would say, those people, so these people that we are with, let's cooperate and do something great. So have a good example. So we'll show that we're doing something helpful. Even the atheists don't agree. There was supposed to be an atheist that's a chaplain at Harvard, and I sent the link to my friend from high school who's on Facebook, and he's an atheist. He goes, nah, he's not a real atheist. He believes in spirituality. He believes in things he can't prove rationally. So he sort of kicked this guy out from the atheist club. But yeah, that atheist is the chaplain at Harvard. They all trust him because they know he's unbiased. He's not going to play side, pick favors between the other religions.
That's interesting. So the concept of this coming to a belief that is, for example, the Baha'i faith. You mentioned at one point liberation theology. And it's important to bring this up because some people, when they view the Baha'i faith, at least at first, they mistake it as another version of what liberation theology tried to bring about. But the Baha'i faith is far from it. Although it does believe in good works and good deeds, the Baha'i faith doesn't focus per se on this action component as much as it focuses on the reason you do it.
Well, Baha'u'llah was not very prescriptive in a lot of things. There was the Kitabi Akdas, it's the idea of taking care of the poor, but mostly it was everyone come together and consult and support the decision of them. You go for unanimity, failing that, everybody supports the majority. And then so every solution has its own specific problem. So if you have a very efficient problem-solving process, you don't need as many a priori solutions that you take out of a box and impose on people. And then you can make adjustments more quickly. You can provide a solution for that particular problem. So all kinds of economic solutions can be devised. And Baha'is were accused of being communists and everything else, So, but you have higher, people, some Baha'is who advocate for more taxes, some Baha'is advocate for fewer taxes, and it doesn't really matter. The point is that when you come to the room, everybody consults, you make a decision. I mean, it's probably good that we have a lot of time to evolve before we get involved in any type of, civil, governing process, because we got a lot to work out ourselves. But we should learn to administer our own Baha'i community affairs and be more, be able to do more social economic justice projects, do more children's education, and be more of service to ourselves and each other. And that's a beacon, it's a light. And somebody sees, people said, whether a pear tree has an apple sign on it, doesn't matter, it's a pear tree. And so people notice great things, whether or not it's from the Baha'is, it's from the atheists. It's good, it's good for the community. What's not to like about teenagers getting together and doing a service project and clean up the streets or helping the elderly? What's not to like about that? Who cares who's doing it, right? Versus teenagers who are running around spraying graffiti and doing vandalism. So I think by their fruits you shall know them. And people can see through labels. There's more media savvy now. I think the labels don't mean as much. And I think some of the problems, people that are turned off by religion simply by hypocrisy. We're talking about us worrying about them. And then of course there are people that are difficult to convince, just move on, they're skeptical. So what skeptics need is evidence. So let's give them evidence.
I think that's an excellent place to leave off for today, about showing through our actions, being the change we want to see in the world, letting deeds, not words, be our adorning. That is definitely something that we can take away from today's session as a matter of how religion and culture, and ultimately the effects of the change that we are on the world around us, how it not just makes a difference, but it starts from this action that we take. And it's funny that to say that the summary is just do it. But that is it. And thank you so much, Dr. Hayden, for joining us today.
That's a pleasure. Thank you all.
And all of you who are joining us on YouTube and on Facebook, if you have questions, please come to www.clearwaterbaha'is.org or comment. And Dr. Hayden, he can see the videos online just like anyone else. And every now and then when you left your comment, he'll be able to respond to you. What's more important though, is that as you take this, as all of the other Clearwater Baha'is videos, there are different subjects in the matter. There's going to be things you may find that may seem like counterpoints. What is most important is you look at the Baha'i writings. If you haven't already, look at the Baha'i writings, the citations we've given, and read for yourself, learn. And that is the biggest thing you can do, is to look for yourself and to understand for yourself. And you'll learn a lot more than what we talked about here. So please feel free to have a very beautiful Sunday. And thank you, Francis, for joining us today.
It's such an honor.